Now, to forbear for ever so little of iris trees and lily orangans, concerning the genesis of Harold or Humphrey Chimpton's occupational agnomen. We are back in the pre-surnames pre-Dromereth period, of course just when Enos chalked hull traps, and discarding once for all those theories from older sources which would link him back to such pivotal ancestors as the Glues, the Gravies, the Northeasts, the Anchors, and the Earwickers of Sidlesham in the 100 of manhood, or proclaim him offsprout of Vikings who had founded Warpentake and settled him in Herrick or Eric, the best authenticated version. The dumb lad read the reading of Hafed bin Eder, has it that it was this way. We are told how in the beginning it came to pass that, like cabbaging Cincinnatus, the grand old gardener was saving daylight under his redwood tree one salty Sabbath afternoon. 𝐓𝐇𝐄 in pre-fall paradise peace by following his plough for rootles in the rear garden of Mobhouse, ye old marine hotel, when royalty was announced by runner to have been pleased to have halted itself on the high road along which a leisure-loving dog fox had cast followed, also at walking pace, by a lady pack of cocker spaniels. Forgetful of all save his vassal's plain fealty to the ethnarch, Humphrey or Harold stayed not to yoke or saddle, but stumbled out hot-faced as he was, his sweatful bandana loose from his pocket-coat, hastening to the forecoats of his publican topee, surcingle, sola scarf, and plaid +4s, putties in bulldog booters ruddled cinnabar with flagrant marl, jingling his turnpike keys and bearing aloft amid the fixed pikers of the hunting party high perch atop of which a flower-pot was fixed earth-side hoist with care. On his Majesty, who was, or often feigned to be, noticeably long-sighted from green youth and had been meaning to inquire what, in effect, had caused yon causeway to be thus potholed, asking substitutionally to be put wise as to whether paternoster and silver doctors were not now more fancied bait for lobster-trapping, honest, blunt, harem-fueled, answered in no uncertain tones very similarly with a fearless forehead. "Nah, your maggers, I war just a coaching on them bluggy earwiggers." Our sailor king, who was draining a guglet of obvious adamel, gift both in Gorbin, upon this, ceasing to swallow, smiled most heartily beneath his walrus moustaches, and indulging that none too genial humour which William the Conk on the spindle side had inherited with the hereditary whitelock and some short-fingeredness from his great aunt Sophie, turned towards two of his retinue of gallow-glasses, Michael, Atheling, Lord of Lakes and Offaly, and the Jubilee Mayor of Drogheda, Elcock, the two scatterguns being Michael M. Manning, Proto-Syndic of Waterford, and an Italian excellency named Giobile, according to a later version cited by the learned scholar Canavan of Canmacnoise. In either case, a triptychal religious family symbolizing puritas of doctrina, business per usuals, and the poochy patch of hamlock where the paddish praties grow, and remarked dilsy-doozily, "Holy bones of Saint Hubert, how our red brother of Poringrania would audibly fume did he know that we have for Sir Trusty Bailiwick a turnpiker who is by turns a pike bailier no seldomer than an earwigger, for he kenned John Phil with his court so grey and his haunts in his house in the morning." One still hears that pebble-crusted laughter, jappy-jap, cheery-charily, among the roadside tree that Lady Holmpatrick planted, and still one feels the emotive silence of the Cladstone allegibelling, "I've my's outside born." Comes the question, are these the facts of his nominogentalization as recorded and accoladed in both or either of the collateral anthropomorphic narratives? Are those their fata which we read in Cymbeline between the foss and its nefas? No dung on the road, and shall no homia be our place like? Yea, Malaki our kingable Khan, we shall perhaps not so soon see. Pink punks that bail for Sikhs' alicents where comb sceptres with centaurs stay. Bear in mind, son of Hokmah, if you so have mythic in your midness, this man is mountain, and unto changes doth one ascend. Heave we aside the fallacy, as punical as Finnegan, that it was not the king's self, but his inseparable sisters, uncontrollable night-talkers, skirt Sir with Dunya said, who afterwards, when the robberers shot up the socialites, came down into the world as amusers, and were staged by Madame Sudlow as Rosa and Millie Muskinget in the pantomime The Two Pites Pathronost, Meliodoris and Galathy. The great fact emerges after that historic date all holographs so far exhumed initially by 𝐓𝐿 bear the sigla HCE, and while he was only and long and always good Duke 𝐓𝐿 for the hungerling spalpings of Luke Alizad and Chambers to his cronies, it was equally certainly a pleasant turn of the populace, which gave him a sense of those normative letters the nickname Here Comes Everybody. An imposing everybody he always indeed looked, constantly the same and equal to himself and magnificently well worthy of any and all such universalization, every time he continually surveyed amid vociferatings from in front of except these few nutties, and take off that white hat, relieved with stop his grog and put it in the log and loose in his bass vocal
boots.
From good start to happy finish, the truly Catholic assemblage gathered together in that King Street house of satin, all lustre-like, above floats and footlights from their aspelvelts and ox-gangs unanimously to applaud the inspiration of his lifetime and the hits of their careers. Mr. Wallenstein Washington Simper Kelly's Immergreen Tourers in a command performance by special request with the courteous permission for pious purposes, the home-droned and enlivened performance of problem passion play of the military, running strong since creation, a royal divorce, then near the approach towards the summit of its climax, with ambitious interval band selections from the Bow Girl and the Lily on all the horsery show command nights from his viceregal booth. His boss alone is ceiling there of Cuckoo's Pit, less imminent than the red rituals of Maccabee and Colin, where a veritable Napoleon the Nth, our world stage's practical joke piece and retired Celtic comedian in his own wise, this folks-forefather all of the time sat, having the entirety of his house about him, with the invariable broad-stretched kerchief cooling his whole neck, nape, and shoulder blades, and in a wardrobe panelled tuxedo completely thrown back from a shirt well entitled to swallow all, on every point far outstarching the laundered claw-hammers and marble-topped highboys of the pit stalls and early amphitheatre. The piece was this: look at the lamps. The cast was thus: see under the cloak. Ladies' circle, cloaks may be left. Pit, Promer, and Parter, standing room only. Habituals conspicuously emergent. A baser meaning has been read into these characters, the literal sense of which decency can scarcely hint. It has been burgeoningly bruited by certain wisecrackers, the stinks of Moharat are in the night plots of the morning, that he suffered from a vile disease. Athma, unmanner them! To such a suggestion, the one self-respecting answer is to affirm that there are certain statements which ought not to be, and one should like to hope to be able to add, ought not to be allowed to be made. Nor have his detractors, who, an imperfectly warm-blooded race, apparently conceive him as a great white caterpillar capable of any and every enormity in the calendar recorded to the discredit of the McJick and Kellikirk families, mended their case by insinuating that, alternately, he lay at one time under the ludicrous imputation of annoying Welsh fusiliers in the People's Park. Hey, hey, hey! Hawk, hawk, hawk!
Fun
and Flora on the lay of that little old joke. To anyone who knew and loved the Christ-likeness of the big, clean-minded giant H.C. Earworker, throughout his excellency long vice-fregal existence, the mere suggestion of him as a loose sleuth nosing for trouble in a booby-trap rings particularly preposterous. Truth, beard prophet, compels one to add that there is said to have been quondam, foot, some case of the kind implicating, it is interdum believed, a quidam. If he did not exist, it would be necessary quoniam to invent him. About that time stambling, around doubling in leaky sneakers with his Tark record who has remained topantically anonymous, but let us hew him Abdullah Gamelek was, it is stated, posted at Malone's at the instance of watch warriors of the Vigilance Committee in years afterwards, cries one even greater, Ibid, a commender of the frightful, seemingly unto such as were soul sated, troped head, fiat, waiting the first of the month fruits turn for that shop pa cabix elicubai on the old house for the charge hard. Roach haddocks off Hawkins Street. Lo, you blondly liar, gob seen you in that narked place, and she's what's edith our home defileth these boils. There's a cab full of bash indeed in the home air of that meal. Slander, let it lie its flattest, has never been able to convict our good and great and no ordinary southern earwicker, that homogeneous man, as a pious author called him, of any graver impropriety than that, advanced by some Woodwards or Regarders, who did not dare deny the Shomers that they had chin ted, chin tam, chin taffied, that they consumed their soul of the corn, of having behaved with ungentlemanski in modus opposite a pair of dainty maidservants in the swath of the rushy hollow whither, or so the two gown and painters pleaded, Dame Nature in all innocency had spontaneously and about the same hour of the eventide sent them both, but whose published combinations of silken lane testimonies are, were not dubiously pure, visibly divergent, as whopped from wept on minor points touching the intimate nature of this, a first offence in vert or venison, which was admittedly an incautious but, at its wildest, a partial exposure with such attenuating circumstances, Garthen gaddeth green, where soak man brideth girling, as an abnormal St. Swithin's summer, and Jesse's Rosaceron, a ripe occasion to provoke it. We can't do without them. Wives, rush to the rest, yours. Offman will tomen while lead is the lol. Zezid's arcadum, Billapleach, Volapluk. Fick up, for flesh Nelly, El Mundo Nov, Zole Flynn. If she's a Lilith, pull early. Pauline, allow, and mailers a bushed. Keep black, keep black. Guiltless of much laid to him, he was clearly, for once at least, he clearly expressed himself as being with still a trace of his erstwhile burr, and hence it has been received of us that it is true. They tell the story, an amalgam as absorbing as calcium, chlorides, and hydrophobe sponges could make it, how one happy go gusty Ides of April morning, the anniversary, as it fell out, of his first assumption of his birthday suit and rites in appurtenance to the confusioning of human races, ages and ages after the alleged misdemeanor when the tried friend of all creation, Tigerwood Roadstaff to his stay, was billowing across the wide expanse of our greatest park in the caoutchouc kepi and great belt and hiding sacks and his Blaufunks fustian and Ironsides jackboots and bagafat gaiters and his rubberized Inverness, he met a cad with a pipe. The latter, the luciferant, not the aureolate, who, the odds are, is still berting dagabout in the same straw bamer, carrying his overcoat under his shoulder, sheepside out, so as to look more like a comfrey gentleman, and signing the pledge as gaily as you please, heartily accosted him with Guinness thaw tool in Jumi dinner Ausel fin. A nice how do you do in pool black at the time as son of our old dazers may still tremblingly recall, to ask could he tell him how much o'clock it was that the clock struck, had he any idea by cock's luck as his watch was Brady's. Hesitancy was clearly to be evitated, execration as cleverly to be harnessoid. The earwicker of that spurring instant, realizing on fundamental liberal principles the supreme importance, nexally and noxally, of physical life, the nearest helperlay being 𝐓𝐇𝐄 St. Patrick's Day and the Fenian Rising, and unwishful as he felt of being hurled into eternity right then, plugged by a soft-nosed bullet from the sap, halted quick on the draw, and replying that he was feeling tipstaff, Q produced from his gun pocket his Jurgensen's shrapnel waterberry, ours by communism, his user capture, but, on the same stroke, hearing above the skirtling of harsh Mother East old Fox Goodman, the bellmaster, over the wastes to the south, at work upon the tin-tun-tunion thunderous tenor taller in the speckled church, Conhunan's call, told the inquiring kidder, by Jehovah, it was 12 of Imsidril and tankard time, adding, but all, as he bended deeply with smoked sardinish breath to give more pondus to the copper stick he presented, though this seems in some confusion with the chap-struck ginger which, as being of sours, acids, salts, sweets, and bitters compounded, we know him to have used as chot-chot for bone, muscle, blood, flesh, and vim vital, that whereas the 𝐓𝐇𝐄 accusation against him had been made, what was known in high quarters as was stood stated in Morgan's Post by a creature in human form who was quite beneath par and several degrees lower than your triple-hydrid snake. In great support of his word, it, quaint anticipation of a famous phrase, has been reconstructed out of oral style into the verbal for all time with ritual rhythmics in quietary quietude and 2 seven-structs from successive accounts by Noah Webster in the redaction known as the sayings attributive of H.C. Earwicker, prize on shillings, postlots free. The flaxen Gygas tapped his chronometrum drum, and, now standing full erect above the ambidjacent floodplain, scene of its happening, with one Berlin gauntlet chop struck in the hole of elbow by ancientest sign lore, his gesture meaning pointed at an angle of 32 degrees towards his Duc de Fer's overgrown milestone as fellow to his gauge, and, after a rendy present pause, averred with solemn emotion's fire, Shake, comrade! Me only, them 5 ones, he is equal combat. I have one straight. Hence my nationwide hotel and creamery establishments, which for the honours of our mutual daughters credit me. I am willing to take my stand, sir, upon the monument, that sign of our redemption, any hygienic day to this hour, and to make my oath to my sinfinners, even if I get life for it, upon the open Bible and before the great taskmasters. I lift my hat, and in the presence of the deity itself, and well of bishop and Meechan of High Church of England, as of such have said my immediate with dwellers, and of every living soul in every corner wheresoever of this globe in general, where useth of my British to my backbone tongue and commutative justice, that there is not one tittle of truth, allow me to tell you, in that purest of fabrications. Gaping gill, swift to mate errors, stern to check self, diagnosing through Eustace tube that it was to make with a markedly post-puberal hyperpituitary type of Heidelberg Mon-Lake cavern ethics, lifted his sloping forward, bad Sweategor good Murrow and Doublenich unto it as he was greedily obliged, and like a sensible ham, with infinite tact in the delicate situation, seen the touchy nature of its perilous theme, thanked them for guilders received and time of day. Not a little token a bach all the same, that was owl the god's clock it was, and upon humble duty to greet his tyke minister, and he shall gild the gap gaper and thee his mouldy voids, went about his business, whoever it was, saluting corpses as a matter of course. One could hound him out, had one heart to, for the monticules of scalp and dandruff droppings blaze his trail. Accompanied by his trusty Snorler and his permanent reflection, verbigracious, I have met with you, bird, too late, or if not, too warm and early, and with tag for idiot repeated in his second mouth language as many of the big-timers verbatim words which he could be called to memory that same fell eve, ere the hour of the twattering of bards in the twitter litter between Druida and the deep sleep sea, when suppertide and souvenir to charlatan maul jointly kim gently and along the quiet darkenings of grand and royal fitman's flush, and crept a hedge, when as to many a soft tongue's pocky talk mud unser us softer pochjog, our Vanda always a quiescent, while studying castells in the blonde and studying cross-shots over the northern, he spat in careful convertedness a musaic dispensation about his hearthstone, if you please, Irish saliva, mulch de hole, but would a respectable prominently connected fellow of Iro-European ascendances with well-dressed ideas who knew the correct things, such as Mr. Shall-we-sigh and Mr. Shall-we-laugh, expectorate after such a callous fashion, no thank yous, when he had his belcher spuckertuck in his pocket? Muse-fed with his thockets after having supped on the dish sought and pottage which he snobbishly dabbed peach Bombay, it is rawly only look and poke and pills and pie which she knows which sinnafid and pibbered him. A supreme of excelling peas, balled under monsieur's milk into white malt wine sour, a proviant the little bilker hoarsely relished, chaffet, in the snevel season, being as fain oat as your rat whiffenel, and on this celebrating occasion of the happy escape, for a crowning of pot valiance, this regional platter, Benjamin of Bullies, with a spoilish olive to middle point its zenith, was marrying itself, poco grasso, Irrebusks very deluxiously with a bottle of Finnis Brewery 98, followed for second nuptials by a peace porter, grand cur, of both of which cherished table lights, though humble the bunket 'tis a lean man's farewell, he obdurately sniffed the cobweb-crusted corks. Our cad's bit of strife, nee Bernice Maxwelton, with a quick ear for spittoons, as the aftertale hath it, gland up as usual with domestic husbandry, no Persicks and Armelians for thee, Pomeranzia, but slipping the clav in her claw, broke of the matter among 111 others in her usual curtsy. How faint these first vespers womanly are, a secret pispigliando, amad, the lovely din of their manfolker. The next night nudge one, as was Hegesapius over a happachi, her eyes dry and small, and speech thicklish because he appeared a funny colour, like he couldn't stood the old hins no longer, to her particular reverend, the director, whom she had been meaning in her mind primarily to speak with. Hush, intra, just a timblespoon, trusting between cupped lips and Annie Lowry promises, might she never have esnicary pudding come Hunanov for her pecla patience. That the gospel so delivered in his espolier, buried teetosely in that Irish stew, would go no further than his Jesuit's cloth, yet, in viners venitus, voluntas vel totum, It was this overspoiled priest, Mr. Brown, disguised as Vincentian, who, when seized of the facts, was overheard in his secondary personality as Nolan and underreared, poor soul, by accident, if, that is, the incident it was an accident, for here the rut of Ecclesiastes of Hippo outpuffs the ritress of Havaban Anna to pianissimi, a slightly varied version of Crooked Ribs Confidentials, what Mère Alois said, but for Josephine's sake, hands between her hands, in fealty sworn, my braver best, my frore, and, to the strains of the secret of her birth, hushly pierced the rubiant oralum of one Philly Thurston, a lay teacher of rural science and orthophonetics of a near stout figure, and about the middle of his 40s, during a priestly flutter for safe and sane bets at the hippic runefields of breezy Baldoyle on a date. W.W. goes through the cald, easily culpable of remembrance by all pickers up of events national and Dublin details, the doubles of Perkin and Pallock, Peer and Prole, when the classic Encourage Hackney plate was captured by two noses in stablecloth finish, Eck and Neck, some and none, Evelo Nevelo, from the cream colt bold boy Cromwell after a clever getaway by Captain Chaplain Blounce Row Henny St. Dolo, drummer Coxon, none depict third, at breakneck odds, thanks to you, great little, bony little, porty little, Winnie Witcher. You're all their nappies, who in his never-rip mud and purpular cap was surely leagues unlike any other phantom-weight that ever tuppet or timber maggies. 'Twas two pissonance timcoves, the wetter is pest, the rins are overt and come, and the voice of the turfer is heard on our land. Of the name of Treacle Tom was just out of pop following the theft of 𝐓𝐇𝐄 Donnelly and Pakenham's finished pork and his own blood and milk brother Frisky Shorty. He was, to be exquisitely punctilious about them, both Shorty and Frisky. A tipster, come off the hulks, both of them awful poor. What was out on the bum around for an oofbird game for Jiminy O'Goblin or a small thick un as chanced, while the Seaforth was making the calling ball, to ear the passin' in the motor clobber make use of his law language. Edzo on. Touching the case of Mr. Adams, what was all in the Sundays about it which he was rubbing noses with and having a gurgle off his own along of the butty bloke in the specs. This Treacle Tom to whom reference has been made has been absent from his usual wild and woolly haunts in the land of counties capitolines for some time previous to that. He was, in fact, in the habit of frequenting common lodging-houses, where he slept in a nude state, hail-fellow with meth, and strange men's cots. But on race night, blotto after divers tots of hellfire, Red Biddy, Bulldog, Blue Ruin and Creeping Jenny, Eglandine's choicest herbage, supplied by the duck and doggies, the galloping primrose, Brigid Brewster's, the cock, the postboy's horn, the little old man's and all swell that aim swell, the cup and the stirrup, he sought with his well-warmed labour-bobbed in a housing-room abide with another, at Block WW. Why didn't he back it? Plump Court, the Liberties, and, what with Multipuke on Voltapuke, Richard alcoherently to the burden of I come, my horse delayed, nom, the substance of the tale of the evangelical Bussy Buzzy and the Roosener Bean. The girls, he would keep calling them, for the collarette and skirt, the sunbonnet and carnation. In parts, it seemed he was before the Ayats of Martas or other Wales the thirds of fossil years, he having beham with Katya when Lavius had her men's least to see in a partnership doodly show whereat he was looking for fight niggers with wild horses. Oft in the chilly night, the metagonistic, the epic Thalamoris, during uneasy slumber in their hearings of a small and Stonybrook cash draper's executive, Peter Cloran, discharged, O'Mara, an ex-private secretary of no fixed abode, locally known as Mildew Lisa, who had passed several nights, funnish enough, in a doorway under the blankets of homelessness on the bunk of Iceland, pillowed upon the stone of destiny colder than man's knee or woman's breast, and Hosty, no slouch of a name, an ill-starred beach busker who, sans rooty and sans scrapey, suspicioning as how he was setting on a toadstool on the verge of self-abyss, most starved, with melancholia over everything in general, Knight Berman, you served him with naticals nano, had been towhead tossing on his shakedown, devising ways and manners of means of what he loved to iftilescence somehow or other in the nation, getting a hold of some chap's parabellum in the hope of taking a wing sociable and lighting upon a side-wheel drive somewhere off the dulky downlery and bleak rookie tramline where he could throw through and go blow the sibicidal napper off himself for 2 bits to bodily well baltitude in the peace and quittibus of a one sure-shot bottle. He, after having been trying all he knew with the lady's help of Madame Gristle for upwards of 18 calendars Highlanders to get out of Sir Patrick Dunn's, those Sir Humphreys Jervis and into St. Kevin's bed in the Adelaide's hospitals. From these incurable Welleslays among those uncurable Welleslays through Sant Iago by his cockle hat, good Lazar, deliver us, without having been able to jerry-wangle at any sides. Lisa O'Davis and Roshi Mongan, who had so much in common, episychatically, if the phrase be permitted, hostis et oder in super petro perfractus. An understood thing slept their sleep of the swimboard in one sweet undulant mother of tumblebunks, with hosty just how the shavers and the shaw, the yokels and the yotes, or, well, the wasters in the wild, and the bustling twinny dawn of all works, meet of anthems, here we pant. Had not been many jiffies furbishing potlids, door brasses, scholars' apple cheeks, and link boys' metals when Ash Hopper minded like no fella he go make a bacon beg fuss long a white man, the rejuvenated busker, for after a good night's raven rumble and a shinkum's top morning with his coaxes he was not the same man. In his broad-awake bedroom suite, our boys, as our Byron called them, were up and a shuffle from the hogs home they loved named the Barrel, cross Eblin's chilled hamlet, 3 routes and restings on their then superfaces curiously correspondent with those linea and puncta where our tubany habany metro maniplums below the Oberfläche under rails and stations at this time of writing. To the thrummings of a cruth fiddle which, cremoning and crononing, levy gravy, witty and wavy, appy, leppy and playable, caressed the ears of the subjects of King Saint Finnerty the Festive, who, in brick homes of their own and in their flavoury Fraseberry beds, heeding hardly cry of honeyman, sowed lavender or foin-boined salmon alive, with their priggish mouths all open for the larger appreciation of this long-awaited messiah of Roratorios, were only half past at sweep, and after a brisk pause at a pawnbroking establishment for the prosthetic purpose of redeeming the songster's truly admirable false teeth, and a prolonged visit to a house of call at Cooge's place, viz., the old sot's hole in the pariah of St. Cicely within the liberty of Colmore, not 1,001 national leagues, that was, by Griffith's valuation, from the site of the statue of Primewater Glasstone setting a match to the march of a maker, last of the Stewards Pute. Where the tale rambles along, the trio of whack-folded diddlers was joined by a further, intentions, apply, tomorrow casual and a decent sort of the had-been variety, who had just been touching the weekly insult, Fewit, and all fig-labbers, who saith of none, had stimulants in the shape of G and G's stood by the damned decent sort, after which stag luncheon and a few ones more just to celebrate yesterday, flush with their fire-stuff fostered friendship, the rascals came out of the licensed premises, Brown's first, the small PSX executive cap hand in their sad rear like a lady's postscript, I want money, pleasant. Wiping their laugh-leaking lipes on their sleeves, how the Boccolines shout their Roskin generally, Saint Fionzeran, and the rhymer's world was with reason the richer for a would-be ballad to the balladeer, of which the world of humanity singing owes a tribute for having placed on the planet's millimap his lay of the vilest, boggier, but most attractionable avatar the world has ever had to explain for. This, more correctly Lubin or fellow me leader, was first poured forth where Rio Livio riots and Col de Hodo humps, under the shadow of the monument of the should-have-been legislator, Eleutheriodendron, spare, woodman, spare, to an overflow meeting of all the nations in Leinster fully filling the visional area and, as a single-mind supercrowd, easily representative what with the masks, wet with faces of all sections and cross-sections, wine shop and cocoa house poured out to brim up the broaching. Of our Liffey-side people, to omit to mention the mainland minority and such as had wayfared via Watling, Arran, Icknield Stain, in chief a halted Cockney car with its quotal of Hardmouth hacks, a northern Tory, a southern Whig, an East England chronicler and a Landwester Guardian, ranging from slips of young Dublinos from Cutpurse Row having nothing better to do than walk about with their hands in their knee pants, sucking airwhackers, Wheedlersit, jumble bricks, side by side with truant officers, 3 woolen balls in poplin in search of a croust of pawn to busy professional gentlemen, a brace of palesmen with Dundrearies, nooning toward Dallies, fresh from snipe hitting and mallard missing on Rutland Heath, exchanging cold sneers, mass-going ladies from Hume Street in their chairs, the bears baited, some wandering hamalags out of the adjacent clover fields of Mosses Gardens, an oblate fater from Skinner's Alley, bricklayers, a Fleming in tabinet fumant with spouse and dog, an aged hammersmith who had some chisellers by the hand, a bout of cudgel players, not a few sheep with the braxy, 2 blue-coat scholars, 4 broke gents out of Simpson's on the Rocks, a portly and a pert, still tassing turn turkey coffee and orange shrub in Tickey's door, Peter Pym and Paul Fry and then Elliot and, Atkinson, suffering hell's delights from the blains of their annuitants acorns, not forgetting a dose of Diana's ready for the hunt, a particularly preponderary pondering on the Roman Easter, the tonsure questioning Greek onions, plunkum, a lace lappet head or 2 or 3 or 4 from a window, and so on down to a few good old souls who, as they were juiced after taking their pledge over at the uncle's place, were evidently under the spell of liquor from the wake of Terry the Tailor, a fair girl, a jolly postboy thinking off 3 flagons in one, a plumodrole, a half-sir from the weaver's almshouse who clings and chat clings to her, a Holdham's cloud-hued petticoat, as child, as curiolator, as Couch O'Leary. The war arrow went round, so it did, a nation once agaze, and the ballad, and the Felibren trancopt metre affectioned by Teosibal in his Cousinus de Punchinello Arahut, stump-stampaded onto a slip of Blancovide and headed by an excessively rough and red woodcut, privately printed on the rhyme press of Delville, soon fluttered its secret on white highway and brown byway to the rose of the winds and the blue of the gales, from archway to lattice, from black hand to pink ear, village crying to village, through the 5 Pussyfors green of the United States of Scotia Picta, and he who denies it, may his hairs be rubbed in dirt, to the ad stands so peaceful of his majesty the flute, the one-crooned king of instruments, pigeth purest, cielo obsoleto, which Mr. Delacy? Horn, anticipating a perfect downpour of plaudits among the rhapsods, piped out of his decent sort hat, looking still more like his Percival namesake as men of Gaul noted, but before of to spout about, the snowy crested curl moist the leader's wild and molting hair. Dr. Hitchcock hoisted his fezzy fuzz at bludgeon's height signum to his companions of the chalice for the Lord fellow, boys and silentium and curia, our Maypole once more where he rose of old, and the canto was chanted there chorused and christened whereby the old tollgate St. Anona's street and church. And a road the lawn, the ran it ran, and this is the ran that Hosty made, spoken, Boyles and Cahills, Scarrets and Pritchards, versified and pursified, made the truth we tell of live and stony. Here lie the refrains of, some vote him Vike, some mote him Mike, some dub him Lynn and Finn, while others hail him Lugbug Danlop, Lex, Lax, Gun or Gwyn. Some apt him Arth, some bapt him Barth, Cole, Null, Sol, Wheel, Wall, but I purse him Percy O'Reilly, else he's called no name at all. Together, arrah, leave it to Hosty, Frosty Hosty, leave it to Hosty, for he's the man to rhyme the ran, the king of all rans. Have you here? Some ha. Have we where? Some ha'n't. Have you heard? Others do. Have we word? Others don't. It's coming, it's brumming, the clip, the clop, oh clap, glass crash, the clicker clacker clash a clop, a zuka shabara crappy crotty grander semi sani who know the bloody happy lady pugum plot. Arditi, music cue. The Ballad of Percy O'Reilly.
About like a rotten old parsnip, and from Green Street he'll be sent by order of his worship to the penal jail of Mountjoy.
To the jail of Mountjoy, jail him and joy.
He was father of all schemes for to bother us, so coaches and immaculate contraceptives for the populace. Bear's milk for the 6-7 dry Sundays a week. Open air love and religion's reform.
And religious reform, hideous in form.
Why says you couldn't he manage it? I'll go to bail, my fine dairyman darling, like the bumping bull of the Cassidys. All your butter is in your horns.
His butter's in his horns. Butter his horns.
Hurrah there, hosty, frosty hosty, change that shirt on you, rhyme the rand, the king of all rands. Change that shirt on you, rhyme the rand, the king of all rands. We had chops, chairs, chewing gum, the chicken pots and china chambers, universally provided by this soft-soaping salesman. Small wonder he'll cheat Harry, one our local lads nicknamed him, when Chimpton first took the floor with his book and shop store down Borgans Wiglore. So snug he was in his hotel premises sumptuous, but soon will bonfire all his trash tricks and trumpery, and 'tis short till Sheriff Clancy'll be winding up his unlimited company with the bailiff's bomb at the door.
Bim bam at the door, then he'll bomb no more.
Sweet bad luck on the waves washed to our island, the hooker of that hammer-fast Viking, and God's curse on the day when Hiblanabe saw his black and tan man of war.
Saw his man of war on the harbour bar.
Where from? Roars Poolberg, cocking up pence. He bowls Dunno Moy Scampital, Wicken, Wimplin, Fampipi, Fingo Vakuska. Once I bet geese Boniface, Stokes, mein Gammaho, Norvikers, Monica, August or Gammaho, Norvikers called, a Norwegian camel old cod. He has begun. Lift it, hosty, lift it, ye devil ye, up at the rhyming ran. It was during some freshwater garden pumping, or according to the nursing mirror while marrying the monkeys, that our heavyweight heathen Humphrey made bold a maid to woo.
Woo-hoo, what'll she do? The general lost her maiden loo.
He had to blush for himself, the old hay-headed philosopher, for to go and shove himself that way on top of her. Begob, he's the crux of the catalogue of our antediluvial zoo.
Mrs. Billing and cool, knows larks good as new.
He was jolting by Wellington's monument, a rotorious hippopotamus, when some bugger let down the backtrap of the omnibus, and he caught his death of Fusiliers.
With his rent in his rears, give him 6 years.
'Tis sore pity for his innocent poor children, but look out for his missus legitimate. When that fool gets a grip of old Eariker, won't there be earwigs on the green?
Big earwigs on the green, the largest you've ever seen.
Sophocles, Shakespeare, Pseudodonto, Anonymosus. Then we'll have free trade girls band and mass meeting, for to saw the brave old son of Scandinavia, and we'll bury him down in the Oxman's town, along with the devil and the Danes.
With the deaf and dumb Danes, and all that remains.
And not all the king's men nor his horses will resurrect his corpus, for there's no true spelling Connacht or Helbis that's able to raise a case.